Welcome to Eliminating Caregiver Chaos, the podcast where we stop pretending caregiving is just about tasks and start dealing with the real weight you're carrying, the emotional one. I'm DJ Castilleja, and I help family caregivers stop drowning in guilt, resentment, and burnout by teaching them how to actually process their emotions instead of just pushing them down and hoping for the best. Now, before we dive in, I want you to know this podcast is designed specifically for you, the caregiver on the go. Whether you're driving to yet another doctor's appointment, maybe you're folding laundry or prepping meals, or maybe you're just trying to steal a few minutes in your car before you walk back into the chaotic life of caregiving, I want you to know that I got you. You don't need to sit down with a notebook or be in the perfect headspace. Just listen. Let this sink in while you're doing what you need to do. Today, I want to ask you one question that's going to unlock so much about why caregiving feels so emotionally overwhelming. Where did you learn about emotions? So let's dive in. All right, so let me ask you this question again, and I really want you to think about it. Where did you learn about emotions and what to do with them? And I don't mean in some abstract way. I mean literally. Who taught you about what to do when you're angry, when you're sad, when you're overwhelmed with guilt or grief? Who sat you down and said, when you have these feelings, here's how you handle them? The answer for most of us is nobody. You didn't have a class on emotional intelligence in school. Your parents probably didn't give you a lesson plan on how to process resentment or work through grief. Instead, you learned by watching. You absorb patterns from your family. I call these the emotional hand me downs. Just like you might have gotten clothes passed down from an older sibling or maybe a cousin like me, you inherited emotional patterns from the people who raised you. So let me paint this picture for you. If your dad went silent when he was upset, what did you learn? You learned that silence equals strength. You learned that when things got hard, you just shut down. You don't talk about it. You push through it. If your mom raised her voice when she was stressed, what did you learn? You learned that's how you express frustration, and now years later, you might find yourself yelling when you never intended to because that's the script you saw played out over and over again. And it doesn't mean that we had bad parents. It just means that that's how they learned how to deal with their emotions. And if your family never talked about feelings at all, if emotions were just swept under the rug, then you learn to bottle everything up. You learn that feelings are something to be ignored, not expressed. Here's what's so important to understand. Those patterns weren't intentionally taught to you. Your parents weren't sitting there thinking, I'm going to teach my child to suppress their emotions. No, they were just using the tools they had, tools they inherited from their parents. Let me give you an example. My father was one of 13 brothers and sisters. And the way my father used to tell me was that they would pick cotton growing up in rural Texas. These were working children. Do you think they learned comfort when they were sad? Do you think if my dad out in the field fell down and maybe scraped his knee, that his dad would come over and give him a hug and say, hey, it's okay. You'll be okay, buddy? Do you think they had time to process their emotions? No, there was no time for that. It was about survival. My father learned his emotional behaviors from what he witnessed from his own parents. My father learned his emotional behaviors from what he witnessed his own parents demonstrate as they tried to survive. And then he passed those patterns down to me. Not because he wanted to harm me, not because he was a bad parent, but because that's all he knew. And this is the critical piece I want you to hear. You can't blame yourself for what no one ever taught you. And this is the critical piece I want you to hear. You can't blame yourself for what no one ever taught you. You're not failing at caregiving because you struggle with emotions. You're struggling because you're trying to navigate one of the most emotionally demanding experiences of your life with a tool belt you inherited from people who didn't have a good one either. Think about it. Caregiving brings up everything: grief for the person you loved one used to be, fear about what's coming, anger at how unfair it all feels, guilt when you lose your patience, sadness that seems to have no end. And what are you supposed to do with all that? You don't know because no one taught you. This isn't something that was taught to you in school. You didn't learn this in high school or college. There just wasn't any classes on this. I went to seminary and I took counseling classes, but in all the education that I had, no one ever talked about what to do with emotions. So, what happens? You default to these hand me down patterns. Maybe you go silent just like your dad did. You withdraw. You stop reaching out to friends. You tell everyone, I'm fine, even when you're falling apart inside. Do you ever do that? Someone comes up to you and they say, how you doing, DJ? And you just reply, I'm fine, so that we don't have to unwrap everything and we don't have to unload all the emotions we're carrying. Or maybe you snap, just like your mom did. You lose your temper over something small, and then you feel crushing guilt afterward because you know your loved one didn't deserve that. Or maybe you just keep pushing everything down, telling yourself you'll deal with it later, except later never comes, and the pressure just keeps building. Here's the thing about the emotional hand me downs: they don't always fit the life you're living now. It's like inheriting clothes that are too tight or worn out with holes in them. They might have worked for the person who wore them before, but they don't work for you. They don't fit for what you're going through. Your parents' way of handling emotions might have gotten them through their challenges, but caregiving is different. It's more intense. It's personal. It's personal because these are your loved ones aging and declining right before your eyes. And those old patterns, they're not built to carry this weight. So, what do? First, you give yourself grace. You stop blaming yourself for every emotional struggle. You recognize that you're not broken. You just never got the instruction manual. Second, you start questioning those patterns. Just because silence worked for your dad doesn't mean it has to work for you. Just because your family never talked about feelings doesn't mean you can't start. You have the power to choose which patterns you keep and which ones you let go of. And third, and this is the most important, you recognize that you can learn these skills now. That's right, emotions are a skill. Just like you can learn to manage medications or navigate doctor's appointments, you can learn how to process emotions. It's not too late, you're not too old, and you're not too far gone. The reason why I'm talking about this today is because so many caregivers carry shame about their emotional struggles. They think, I should be handling this better. What's wrong with me? But nothing is wrong with you. You're just trying to do something incredibly difficult with tools that were never designed for this job. Once you understand that, once you see where these patterns came from, you can stop beating yourself up and you can start building something better. So here's what I want you to take away from today, and we're going to keep building on this topic. The emotional patterns you're using right now, you didn't choose them, you inherited them, and they're probably not serving you well in caregiving. And we're going to talk more about that. But now that you know that, you can do something about it. You can start learning new skills, which I'm going to teach you in this series of podcasts. You can start building emotional capacity, and you can stop carrying the shame of thinking you're supposed to know all this already. And by the way, I'm talking to caregivers, but this goes for all people in all areas of life. Very few people have been trained by a counselor or by a therapist on how to deal with their emotions. And so consider this the wake up call. You can start learning new skills today. If you want help with this, if you want coaching or want to learn how to work with me at a deeper level, head over to www.eliminatingcaregiverchaos.com. I'd love to work with you. Thanks for listening to the Eliminating Caregiver Chaos. We're going to talk more about this in the upcoming episodes, and I'll see you next time.